Do you have another banner you want on top of it?
I love waiting for the live to happen.
Oh
And
my
then just
gosh, there it
it
is.
scrolls. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
How are
Mm.
you? Hi, Macy.
Hi.
Oh, I noticed you have a
Welcome,
new
everyone.
banner right now, the Love Incubator.
Yes.
Ooh, I want to hear more. Say more before we start.
Dang. Yeah, well, it's actually on our topic. That's why I was laughing so hard when I got your message, because I was like, oh, well, starting mid-August, I'm doing a 5-week deep dive to support people in going from fear to love, which in so many, what I really like, the body piece of it is going from protection to connection. So that's what the Love Incubator is focused on for those 5 weeks. And it's exactly that. It's like, how powerful fear is in keeping us from what we want. And I'm sure you have a lot of interesting things about that with money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that I channeled you today and just knew that that's what you needed, or what you were excited to talk about.
Yeah.
And of course, to me, fear is probably the absolute number one limiting issue for everybody in both love and money. It's those unconscious fears that we have where we try to minimize them. And if we don't figure out how to overcome our fear, it's the greatest limiting factor in getting what we want. So yeah, I mean, we could do like you and I together could do a 10-day workshop on fear and love and money, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And what I love about really diving into it and basically facing it is that it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I mean, the more we recognize how it's derailing us and messing us up in certain cases, and actually add in tools and practices and systems that support us in being secure and safe and connected to our money and love, things change. And then you just kind of don't buy into the same old stories anymore.
Yeah. I'm curious, what would you define fear as? Like, how do you think of fear and how do you talk about fear? I don't know if you and I've ever had this direct conversation about it. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things. I see it as like this emotional state that that brings us into a story about what we can't have or what we can't handle or what we can't create. And then as we buy into that story, then that impacts our choices and our decisions. And then we kind of are in a cycle of that. For me, just being able to recognize fear for what it is, then helps me to separate from falling into the cycle of all that. And it does take some practice and skill. And certainly in relationship, it's not necessarily instant, although it probably could be, but we're kind of not trained to instantly change like that. What do you say fear is?
It's funny. I was just putting in the comments for anyone watching right now or later, put your questions in the comments about what's your biggest love and or money fear. That way we can chat about it here. I always say fear is the future expectation of awful results. So like, I like the FEAR, right? So future expectation, adding the of in there, awful results, because it's a future-based projection of a made-up story. And so, and often it's based on past challenges, we could say traumas or experiences that we've had, and then we replay those out in the future and we project into the future something that's made up. And so I think about like worry and fear and stress as it's like praying for trouble to come your way, because you're making up the story in your mind that something awful is going to happen, and it's just a habit and a pattern. And it was conditioned into us to be fearful because we have that automatic response of tracking our surroundings for danger. And so it's like a survival wiring. And then the problem is our brain doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imagined threat. And when we live in that place of fear all the time, we just keep creating threats for ourselves. And then it causes us to limit what we do in the world. It's huge.
I love, I love that. And it's also, really noticing, I know Joe Dispenza talks about this, where it's like the chemical aspect of that becomes like an addictive drug. And we sort of get used to that being a way of being. And, our world shows us that, we're supposed to be afraid of this, afraid of viruses, afraid of, people, afraid of all of these things. And, it is a choice to decide to make a new choice. I mean, to
totally
support ourselves in a different way. And I find that a lot of people, including myself, one of the things that I misidentified was that if I wasn't in fear, it felt like nothing was happening. That like nothing, that like just space and relaxation was a sign that nothing's happening. I need to create something. Like there was just an interesting relationship with that.
Yeah. Like fear as a motivator.
Yeah. And just as a, just a comfort, an uncomfortable comfort. So just a way of being. And for me, I also think it was part of it was like, oh, well, this is then I'm valuable. If I'm busy and I'm having drama and I'm having this stuff going on in my world, then look, I'm real. I'm feeling and I'm, having all this stuff happening. And I recognize more and more and more that my new relationship with ease and flow and space and that kind of feeling as something that I'm asking for more.
Yeah, me too. So much like that's the feeling of it. Like, like the reason I said fear as motivation when you were saying what you said, because like I've reflected a lot on how much of my life history I created results through fear as the main motivating factor. It was like the underlying force. Instead of being inspired to move forward in joyful action, it was like fear-based motivation. It was like cracking the whip, like, oh my God, if you keep yourself constantly scared, you can get a lot done, which it worked in a lot of ways. I did get a lot done and it didn't feel good. It's like I didn't feel great while I was doing it because I was there's that underlying security, when we're talking about money. If you're doing money, building your wealth through fear-based means, it means that you have a scarcity mentality. You're always thinking like, I've got to keep pushing hard, otherwise it might all fall apart and I won't make the money I need to make. And that's it's a pretty significant survival-based threat. And it's not very fun to live that way.
Right. Well, and that links to what you said last week, which really stuck with me all week, was the patience thing.
Yeah.
Patience, like impatience as a form of scarcity and, fear as a form of scarcity. And as a motivator, I mean, just look at how many sales pages and, sales conversations and, Facebook ads and all of the things that can promote things from the space of fear.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it is it's funny you're saying this because I was talking I was on a podcast interview yesterday and they were asking about sales marketing strategy. And I was talking about how we live by the pleasure pain principle and that you've got to know your avatar really well to understand how to market to them. And, it's like they want to move away from pain and move toward pleasure. And if you can hit those hot buttons, then it's helpful. And so we were having that conversation, like, is that responsible marketing type of conversation? It's like, to me, I go like, you want to understand human behavior. And it's exactly what we're saying. It's like people live stuck in their lives, not getting the love or the money they want forever because of these things. Like, and so when you're speaking to somebody in their hot buttons, yeah, you're going to evoke you're going to trigger the fear because we all have it.
I know.
I've never met a person yet who doesn't.
I am glad. Let's talk about this because I think this is important because there are some things where it's like, I think about it in terms of people who come to me saying, oh, I'd love to start a family and I'm, 40 and, I haven't had any healthy relationships. And, where I sometimes will go because it's kind of a thing. It's like, okay, well, what's it going to take for you to take a step to figure this out? And what are the consequences of not choosing something different? And that usually does elicit some fear of like, okay, well, yeah. I mean, my own personal experience was that. I mean, I didn't make a choice or I didn't even know that I could learn about relationship stuff and change my world for so many of my dating years that by the time I made that choice, I was already in my 40s and that sort of like kid boat sailed, which was fine because that wasn't something that I was wanting to create. But I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah. There's a line there.
Well, it's funny. I'm going to show this banner. Fear in love. I'm getting too old. In money. I'm getting too old. You know what I mean? And it shows up in love. It's like, oh no, I'm getting too old. Maybe it's too late for me to find the one. And like, if I did want to have kids and all those things. In money, it's like, oh no, I'm getting too old. And how am I going to deal with retirement? And so it's that fear of like, I'm getting too old. Time is going by too fast. Maybe it's too late for me.
Right. And all these other years I did it wrong.
Yeah.
With the judgment that comes with that, like going both directions in that. So, to me, in studying, I'm immersed right now in another Access Consciousness class, and it's really fun to learn about fear as a distractor implant, they call it. So fear as a distraction from our actual power. So in money, it's like, okay, when we get fearful that we're not going to make the money or not going to be successful or just get in the spiral of fear. Same in relationships. Oh my God, I'm going to get too old. No one's out there for me. There aren't any good ones left. That spiral, then you're taken away from the power that you have to actually choose something. And to actually create and to actually listen to the wisdom that wants to come up. I mean, I'm doing this 5-week love incubator around moving from the protection mode, which is a fear-based mode, to a connection mode. And there is rewiring that happens. If we have an addiction to fear, there are some deep-rooted tracks. And so, for many people, it's really hard to believe that doesn't have to be the case. Yeah. And it's a skill.
It is. I want to say so many things that you just brought up because, let's say you've had a history that has been abusive and I always complicate these words because the labels I don't always love. Yeah. But let's say that you've had a challenged history where there was a lot of perceived trauma in your life, you're going to have different brain development, and you're actually going to respond to fear more intensely. And then it's
Yes.
going to have a deeper rooted wiring into your system. So for example, for me, like it's taken me years to shift my automatic responses away from like startle. I still have like a startle response that's really intense. And like I've trained my brain very strategically in a direction to respond to life differently, just because like first I was premature, so my brain development was already wired differently. And so fear lives in your amygdala, and it lives in
Yeah.
the animal part of your brain where we have monkey mind. And so we really, the only way to change that is through conscious intention and action. And if you were let's say you lived in the perfect childhood, you probably have less response and less fear. You have like less of an automatic response, and you have less fear that you make up in your mind. You know, you could live in different environments where you would have more of a rapid response to that. And I want people to know it's absolutely possible to change. The cool thing
Yeah.
about brain plasticity is that you can change your brain and reshape it. It takes a little time though, right?
Yeah.
And so it takes this dedicated effort to go like,
Yeah.
okay, I can actually overcome my fears. I mean, I used to be so scared of everything all the time. You know, it was like just lived in a state of instant automatic fear. And I don't know if I ever told you this story. I was at a DeMartini event, and I had like this wild epiphany crying moment of like, I got this, I don't know what you'd call it. I've been liking the term lately, divine download.
Yeah.
I got like a divine download, and it was like a voice in my head or from wherever said, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like you can, like, it was like, and for me at the time, it was this spiritual transformation, because I had been very averse to like anything related to the word God, because I grew up as a fundamentalist Christian.
Yes.
And so we were having this spiritual conversation and talking about God as grand organized design and like universal intelligence and all this stuff. And I had this huge, it was like, I mean, it makes me want to cry when I talk about it right now. It's like, I reconnected with my spirituality. And in that
Mhm.
moment, it was like, there is nothing to be afraid of. Let go and know that all is God, like grand organized design. It was like a voice in my head, and I just started crying. And ever since that day, my relationship to fear has been very, very different. And it was such a gift. And I can't say like it wasn't like I had this epiphany and it just came out of the clear blue when I was in a horribly fearful moment. It was more like I've been avidly pursuing
Yeah.
growing and learning how to overcome my fears, because I know that it can be an incredible limiter of your power. And
Yeah.
so I was on a conscious track to do that. And so, it's like for everyone watching this, at whenever you're watching it, know that you can dramatically shift your relationship to fear, and it will give you very different outcomes in your love and your money.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, because the time and what is possible and being able to, that sounds like it was a big moment, which created a big, energetic experience in your body, which, probably clearly left a mark. And,
Yeah.
I mean, the time in practicing these things is really important. And,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really powerful. And same with the relationships, because it's, and I think about money, like there are actual money traumas that people get growing up, not just, the relationship traumas. And even if it's a good childhood, you still are making up childhood level beliefs around what relationship is. And that's where we're
Yeah.
typically functioning from. And do you really want to date as a child? Or do you want to, be able to come in from a powerful place as that wise woman and, being able to know that you can handle things and get the tools and skills to navigate relationships in a whole different way.
Yeah, I love what you just said. So this is what it made me think of. I'm just going to put it up here. Fear holds you in the childish past. So it's like whatever wound you experienced, you keep replaying out in your adult life back at that stage of when it happened originally. And then you stay that person if you don't consciously shift it.
Yeah. Oh, and that was the other thing. You said something I mean, the reptilian brain piece, like the fear holds you in the childish past. That's what's kind of interesting about learning about the nervous system, because the systems that are doing the protection, that are doing the fear, that are doing flight or fight are the oldest parts.
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
like that tends to be the leader, moving away from pain and seeking pleasure. And yet, knowing that we are conscious being that is the newest space and
Yeah.
continues to become even more powerful, as anyone who's here is likely already doing some studies on awareness and mindfulness and something like that. And being aware of that was something that just this week I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I always knew that part was the oldest part, but I didn't really know why I cared. And it just kind of clicked for me. It's like, oh, well, yeah. So it's, natural that that's going to be the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that stands out in what you're saying from my perspective is how avidly you are continuing to practice growth work. It's like you just talked about accessing consciousness and or access consciousness and going to workshops and like reading. And you and I talk about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
It's like our lives, like we live it, we love it, we learn it, we do it. And so for people watching, one of the things I always tell my people is like, you got to learn to be a master of yourself. And the reason why is because we are wired for fear, for survival, for limiting ourselves to be kind of animalistic, and it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if you want to stay in that place, stay in that place. Obviously, if they're here watching us, they're probably not in that place, but it's like, I like to remind people that it's a constant journey and a constant practice. And that I still work on myself every day because I break through to new layers of myself. Like this week I had like a day of like massive shifts through crying and journaling and releasing and learning and growing. And it's a constant, and I love it. I don't want it to sound like it's drudgery in that consistency. To me, it's like, I look forward to learning more about myself, because if I didn't, my fears would have kept me stuck forever. I mean, they would have just taken hold and I would have never gotten anywhere close to where I am today.
I do think that's so important to share, because I'm the same way. I mean, everything I do has some like one hand in some sort of personal development at this point. Like, everything I read, when I wake up, when I go to bed, I'm reading, I'm doing my meditation practices. And that's really because the reward is so great for me. And it brings so much more ease into my life. And as I acknowledge that, so for many of you out there who are like, well, I'm doing this work and then I'll be done with this work and then I don't have to do any more work. Anyone out there who's saying, oh, I have to do more work, and like, what's wrong with me that I have to do more work? Like that kind of conversation in your head. Once again, that is fear talking. And actually, what else can you have? What else would you like to ask for? And how much fun can you have with all of this? Because whether you are asking for more money or whether you're asking for a love relationship, there's always going to be a next level, I think, because I like that growth. And so on that note too, it's like, what can you acknowledge right now that all of your choices for personal development and learning and being a part of these groups has created? And can you acknowledge, wow, right now I'm here because I made those other choices?
Yeah. You're bringing up something I think is so interesting, because I mean, obviously we know my company name is NFA Money, no fucking around money. So for me, I'm always like, deep dive, go all the way, be radically responsible, like bring it on. It's not work. It's actually like, it's a joyful process to uncover new parts of ourselves. And I know that that's not how everybody thinks. And so it's like when you say, you know, some of the people having that fear of like, oh my God, I have to do more work. What's wrong with me? Like I always say, like, shift that perspective to like, bring it on. Awesome that I came to
Yeah.
this place where I realized that there are great teachers like you and me who are dedicating our lives to learning everything we can to help people get there faster, you know, and that's why, and just like become, to me, I think one of the most important things is to fall in love with the process of becoming a master of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, because then you have a magic wand to do anything you want.
Yeah. And also, I know that when I first started my business and I was doing a lot of different things to expand and grow and work with my own money stories and you know, business processes and all of that, that I can look back and see kind of how I overcomplicated it and brought a lot of heaviness into it because I was like, well, I have to look like that person or I have to look at like that person. So there was stuff that was in that experience that now I don't do. So, you know,
Yes.
part of my own self-mastery is actually being able to have so much more fun and ease with growth even. Like, so
Yeah.
how many people have associated growth with pain? You know, there are sayings out there, no pain, no gain. Like,
Yeah.
I don't actually believe that. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Well, you said something too. It's like the making it hard in the beginning, and also it's like it's comparing yourself to other people, right? It's like you're like they're ahead of me, so there's fears around. I'm not going to get there fast enough. What if I can't ever get there? What if I don't become as big as them? Like all those things, right? What if I don't ever get the love like they have?
yeah.
And so there's that, and then it's I just lost my thought of the other thing I wanted to say that you were sharing. Darn it. It went. Sometimes that happens.
Overcomplicating it,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
overthinking it.
overcomplicating. To me, like fear stands out as a mask of like we do a lot of avoidance strategies in order to compensate for our fears. Like we do a lot of pretending, and imposter syndrome is a fear. And yet, when we have imposter syndrome, we overcompensate to hide that we feel like imposters, which is a fear, right? We're afraid
Mhm.
that people are going to realize we're a fraud, so we act like an imposter. In a dating situation, it could be like we're afraid that people are not going to like who we authentically are, so we put on masks and pretend we're
Yeah.
someone else. And then you're guiding someone to fall in love with a farce. Like it's
Yeah.
not who you really are. And then how can anyone ever really love you deeply if they don't really even know who you are? And so, you know, fear is like it's
Yeah.
intense. It's a big one. And yeah, I want people to be encouraged to go like, okay,
Yeah.
everyone struggles with these things. Like everybody struggles with this stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
And yeah,
And it's possible to overcome and work with.
exactly. Yeah. And what if
Yeah.
fear was never real?
Yeah. I'm curious about this. Okay, because I've had people ask me this before. Like, isn't fear? What do you think about fear being a good thing? Like, is it something we want to eliminate, or is it something we want to work with, or change
I
our
don't think we have
relationship
to
to?
eliminate it. I feel like it's more changing the relationship to it. Like I practice not buying into it and really noticing when that stuff comes up that there's probably something else available that I can be aware of or acknowledge or play with that doesn't have to feel like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, I love the book, The War of Art, because it's a whole book on all of the ways resistance shows up. And I think of resistance as
Ooh.
a form of fear. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very sneaky, you know, and it's anytime you're asking to make a change. If you're asking, if you're on a spiritual path or you're trying to lose weight or you have, you know, you'd like to have a new kind of relationship or anything matters of the heart, body, money, like spiritual, like all of these things naturally bring in the fears in the forms of inner critics, in the
Yeah.
forms of limitations, in the forms of, like you said, avoidance.
Yeah.
And so then your system wins. You know, if you
Yeah.
fall into that, then it's like, you know, the other book I would say that's related to this too is The Big Leap, when he talks about upper limit problems. And that's typically when the fears really come up, is when you are on the edge of something great. And for
Yeah.
me, just knowing that and going, oh, am I actually like freaking out, or is this an upper limit problem? And usually it's yes, it's an upper limit problem.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. Well,
because I don't think we can be void of it, but I think we can have
no.
awareness of what it's doing.
Yeah. Well, to me, what stands out in what you're saying is like, it makes me think about how you can use fear as a feedback system.
Yeah.
So just like your emotions, like fear is a version of an emotion, and you go like, oh, I'm afraid of this. Is this something I need to lean into and step through so that I can break through to the next level? Or is it an actual survival threat that I need to listen to and go the other direction? Right. And
Yeah.
so like I go like, of course, if you're in a survival situation, we need to have the fear response where you have the instinct to fight, flight, freeze, right?
Yeah.
That can save your life. But we're talking about like these made up versions in our brain. And when you notice the fear, it can be a really good indicator as to your next move and breaking through to the next level. So it's like, fear
Yeah.
is so cool in those ways. Like I think of it as there's benefits and drawbacks to fear
Yeah.
if you know how to use your conscious awareness and be self-reflective about it.
Yes.
And sit with it, and not, Carl Jung's saying, what you avoid persists and grows in size. So it's like you avoid the fear and it's just going to get worse until it's big enough that you have to face it. And we don't necessarily want to attract it that way. It's like for me, I'd rather just face it consciously and go like, oh, my fear is showing up. What is the next layer of me to dig into so that I can understand that fear?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good, because when you notice that, one of the things that I know will be part of the incubator is practicing that, like noticing that, oh, I'm scared to go on a date, or I feel really like anxious about that. Then it's like asking, okay, well, is there an actual threat? Because the system is designed for that, but 99% of the time there's not.
It's just made up in our brains.
Yeah.
Well, I keep having it play out in my mind, the idea of like a child touching a stove and then never ever doing it again. Like it takes one time of that experience to have that reactive response that protects you from that day forward. The issue is that what will happen, like when we're little kids, let's say you get rejected or you have a negative situation that you perceive in your mind as being really bad, like rejection or, marginalization, like, being poor, like all those things, bankruptcy. That might not happen when you're a kid, but it might happen to your family. And then you develop this really strong response in your subconscious being about to avoid at all costs those things in the future. And so if you don't get conscious of those, it's going to run your life forever. And so you like facing your fears. And when I say facing your fears, I don't love or buy into the philosophy like, if you have fear, do it anyway. Like, sure, that can work, but it's so much more powerful to actually go, what is the fear? Let me get conscious of it so that I can then choose how to respond to it differently in the future. And then it doesn't run your life anymore. It's how I like to do it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a need for some kindness and presence and exactly. And I do find that it's diminished so much in my world, where I just don't buy into, I just don't have those automatic fears as much as I used to, because I've changed it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about the money though. Like, are people actually afraid of money and not know it? Like, are they afraid of actually getting money and not know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And it'd be similar to saying, like, are they afraid of getting a relationship? It's not about the actual thing. It's all the ideas they have around the thing, right? So it's like people are afraid of what financial success could mean to their identity, to the way they're treated, to their own self-worth, to their judgments and subconscious fears around it. So they might sabotage having more money, or they might sabotage through losing big amounts of money, and so they stay at this money set point because that's where fear keeps them. And so fear is operating in all of the sabotage spaces. It's an unconscious fear of what you're making up the story to be about having that thing that you're trying to attract, and trying being the key word, because you have those subconscious fears around it. And so it's our job to unearth our subconscious fears in both love and money. And, I wanted to ask, so you said in the incubator, it's funny that I just noticing that our name tags aren't showing. So I don't know if other people.
Oh, they go off when the regular banner's up.
Oh,
but they'll go back on.
Oh, let's see. Let's hide that. Oh, it's the other banner. Oh, let's see. Cause I want everyone to be able to see. Okay. So, and then that one. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. So Macy is doing the Love Incubator.club. Go there for information. Tell us, since we're talking about fear, tell people watching, what are the main things they're going to get from that? And then I'll talk about Moneymaker Lab.
Yeah, the main things that you're going to get are actual experiential practices that do dissolve the fear so that you have the capacity to receive love. We can cheerlead our way through this, but it doesn't work. So, this is about getting that deeper rewiring to open the heart to receive love. And it's one thing that I see over and over and over again, where people are unconsciously, or consciously, some people know, I have a wall up, I have a barrier up, I'm, definitely don't want to get hurt again. And therefore there's a lot more effort happening that is pushing love away, rather than being able to be in a space where you can have fun and be curious and actually feel safe in a relationship. That's everything.
It's huge. God, and it's what an incredible feeling to feel safe and amazing in a relationship. Such a good feeling.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that in my relationship every day. I want to cry right now thinking about it. It's just it's so soothing and wonderful, and it's possible for everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Love Incubator Club. And is it a program that you offer to work with people?
This is a group experience. It's not something I offer all the time. It's a 5-week thing that's starting mid-August, August 21st. I have 2 groups going, and it's only $500 to do it. And it's includes one of my 30-day practices, which is,
oh my God, I have people to send your way. I can't wait. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. For Moneymaker Lab, I've just started. It's a Facebook group, and it's private, and it's for driven entrepreneurs and coaches, online entrepreneurs and coaches who want to build their business to 6 figures plus. And I bring in tips, tools. It's organically evolving as I'm growing it right now, because I'm new to Facebook groups. And so I do lives in there. I'll start doing webinars. I want to do a lot of community engagement. I actually send everyone a card in the mail, personally, with an NFA sticker. And I want to build a really solid, awesome community. They get a free 30-day mini course called 30 Money Making Secrets. And then that opens the door to all of the things that I offer, which I have all kinds of cool offerings and, programs to work with people to help them make money more easily and overcome these fears. It's all of the work I do is about unconscious fears, really, because just like you said in love, you can kind of cheer your way through things, and you can force and you can push and you can mask. And when you do that, you will never actually feel good. In my world, in the business world, it's you will end up overworking, feeling stressed, building a prison out of your business, not making the money you want to make. And so getting rid of those rooted fears and unconscious beliefs is what lays the foundation for you to really enjoy your money-making process. And that's the main goal I have with people is let's help you make money doing exactly what you love, and learn how to make whatever amount you want and really feel good about it and build your wealth over the long term, playing every day.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, I can say you're amazing at that. And the thing that really strikes me about all that is, in the relationship space, people can go, okay, look at their love life and say, I would like a person. I don't have a person. It's not working. But they can also really sense the barriers. I think in the money space, it can be really sneaky. So for those of you out there who are like, oh yeah, I can receive money. It's totally something else's problem. be aware of that, because it's so interesting how our money story can have this actual fear of receiving money and we don't know it.
Oh, yes. Huge. I love that he says, I have a client I worked with just today, and we are working on his ability to receive. And as he expands in his ability to receive, just compliments even, he is having the biggest shifts happen in his life and business, and I'm like, in work world. And I'm just like, this is so cool. And it was something that I really struggled with. Exactly what you're talking about. It's like the lack of the ability to receive. And this could even look as simple as like when people compliment you, you minimize it and don't like compliments and you feel weird about it. You don't like gifts. You don't like it when people pay for you. You're limiting your potential moneymaker, because the universe is wanting to give to you all the time. So if you aren't willing to receive, you're blocking your money flow. And people, and it sounds so counterintuitive. Like, really, why would I ever say no to money? We do it all the time in very interesting ways. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, fun. Yay.
Yes. Oh, so many good things.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Yes.
I look forward to seeing your questions, and do reach out to us. We're real people on the other side, ready to support you in both of these areas. And
absolutely.
I know you're open to it. I'm open to it. And the most important thing is that I want to connect with you, meet you, and look at what else is possible.
Yes, and yes. Couldn't have said it better. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here this week or watching the replay. We'll see you next time.